Well, it is a pleasure to be interviewing Jill Jacobs. And Jill, you've been a mover and shaker here in California and impacting programs nationwide by many of the wondrous innovations that you have created and your flexibility in how you work. So for me, this is a real honor to talk to you. It's been a lot of years. And what I think about most often when I think about you is your incredibly flexible and wonderful opening to contracts and arrangements with county and state organizations to expand services to families. So as we get started, what I'd love is for you to talk a bit about the things that you feel the public needs to know about you, in particular, the professionals that'll be watching this interview.
Well, I think I'm a dying breed. I think I'm one of the last of the baby boomer generation, adoption CEOs, executive directors that were in adoption leadership for a long time. And I'm a little saddened by that. I was hoping we would be able to hand the baton off. But I came into the field 27 years ago when there was a really small but incredibly powerful executive directors, and together we really moved the field forward in a lot of different ways. And a lot of that was collaborative. A lot of that was breaking down barriers in terms of services and who was served. And it was also around learning how to be good collaborative partners with the public sector, which is what we need to do.
Well, can you give me some examples of that?
Sure. I think one of the examples is the collaboration between private agencies, and it's been several of us, and San Francisco Human Services Agency, that they privatized their adoption program many years ago, before my time, so more than 30 years ago. And the program has been with a number of different providers, but it's a true collaboration, public and private. And we work very closely together to make sure that the children of San Francisco are supported and raised in good families, whether that's family of origin or extended family or families from the community.
And can you tell me a little bit, in fact, you could tell the name of your agency and a little bit about your agency and why you believe it succeeded so well when other organizations are being gobbled up by larger organizations. Tell me a little bit about your agency.
Sure. So Family Builders by Adoption's been around almost 48 years. We're coming up on our 48th year. And our mission is specifically to create permanency for children and youth that are in the foster care and now juvenile justice systems also. We've kind of branched into that community to be looking at permanency for youth that have been involved in the probation system. We have a number of different programs and services. We operate the Adoption Exchange for the state of California and a number of direct services, all of which get us to permanency. I think there's a couple things that set us apart from some of my colleagues and other agencies. One is that all of our services are available in English and in Spanish.
Wow.
And we welcome monolingual Spanish-speaking folks, and sometimes other agencies aren't so open to that. But we've discovered that you don't have to speak English to be a good parent. How about that?
Hallelujah.
Right? Yeah. And the second area is our passion and commitment to working with older youth and really working hard to get older youth out of the foster care system into families before they exit the foster care system. Our vision is that every child will leave the foster care system with a supportive parent and family. And we were part of the founding California Permanency for Youth Project Task Force more than 20 years ago. They really worked on this in California because we had so many children in the foster care system, and we really needed to be looking at what was happening to those older youth. When I came to my position 27 years ago, there was 125,000 children in foster care in California.
Wow.
So we've worked hard to get front and center around permanency for older youth. No child is ever too old or too anything, too the wrong color, too many diagnoses, too anythings to have a permanent family. whether that's adoption or another form of permanency. And then the third area is our work in LGBT communities. As I said, when I came to Family Builders, there was 125,000 children in foster care in the state. And I knew this whole community of people that wanted to be parents and wanted to raise kids, and the two weren't connected. And there was a lot of concern about connecting those two things. And so we helped create that bridge. And most years, more than half of the families that we work with in our foster care to adoption program are LGBT families from the community. And that then led us to looking at what was happening with LGBT youth in the foster care system. And we've created a program that is probably the nearest and dearest to my heart. It's called the Youth Acceptance Project. And it's an intervention that we do with the families of LGBT, gender expansive, non-binary kids. And we help those families understand what's going on with their children. The child welfare system really hasn't known what to do to support those families. So when they've come to the attention of social services, often the child's removed, put in institutional care, and the family's left just hanging. And we've created this intervention that's really, the secret weapon is social work, good old-fashioned social work. Meet the family where they're at, sit down at the kitchen table with them, listen, help them understand what's going on in a non-judgmental way, and then help them learn and help empower them to know how to support their youth. There's a profound statistic that I live by now, which comes from the Trevor Project, which is a national suicide hotline for LGBT youth. And that statistic is that children and youth that perceived they have an affirming, supportive family are 93% less likely to attempt suicide.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that's just absolutely profound to me. So our intervention is just sit down with those families and help them see that and understand that and learn what they can do. And also help them understand what's going on. The first time I read anything from the mom of a transgender child, I saw the profound grief that this mom was experiencing, and it reminded me of the grief that we've all seen and experienced and lived in the adoption world, and the parallel there. And we have to honor, many of these families are struggling with grief and guilt and fear. And so we have to honor that and support that. But in doing that, this intervention has been incredibly successful. We've been able to keep children from not entering the foster care system. If they have gone into care, we've been able to get them back home in a very short period of time. And we've been able to reduce the incidence of suicidality or suicide attempts and self-harming behaviors in the youth, to get them back to school, really working towards the well-being of the children, and making sure that the families are able to continue that.
You must have a very large staff and a very, very well-trained staff that work closely together. How have you managed to pull all this together financially? How have you managed to get the support that you've needed?
Well, we don't have a large staff. We're a small agency. We have about 30 employees. And we do work closely together. We have an incredible team of very committed employees. Whenever we do employee surveys, the thing that comes out first and foremost is always that we're a mission-driven organization, and that people feel that from the top, from the board, from the leadership, that we are mission-driven, and that's why we're all there. Funding's always a challenge. You know that. Everybody knows that. Funding's always a challenge. Funding the Youth Acceptance Project has been particularly challenging because it doesn't fit into one of the boxes of the traditional funding streams in the child welfare, social services, or even mental health system. So we're always trying to figure out, how can we do this? Can we get a grant for it sometimes? Where does it fit? What's the new funding stream coming down? Can we, put a square peg in a round hole to make it work? And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of interest in that particular program, and the barrier is funding to be able to bring it to fruition. We're operating that program soon we'll be in 7 counties in California in the Bay Area, and then we're in 5 jurisdictions in other states.
You are
not providing direct services. In other states, we provide a consultation and a training model. But that includes some of the states that are struggling with some of the really obnoxious and difficult anti-transgender legislation right now.
Yeah. Can you say which states you are doing consulting?
Sure. We are in New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and in Missouri.
Oh my goodness. So you really have a tremendous national reach at this point.
We're getting there. And all of those sites out of state have come from collaborations that I've been involved in. They're all partners in the Family Builders Network or some other association. So
And tell us about the Family Builders Network.
well, Family Builders Network is a national group of professionals and organizations. There's independent consultants and organizations that do what we do. Their mission is permanency, and they carry that out in a number of different ways. And we're a small informal network, mostly collegial support, although we support each other in lots of other ways professionally. And it's just a great group of folks, and we come together. We have an annual think tank where we get together and work on usually one particular topic for a couple days, and then throughout the year are just supportive with each other. And we're probably in maybe 20 different states, the group of folks total. So.
This is such a unique situation that you're describing, which is why I'm kind of staying with it. I want our folks who are viewing your interview and want to take away maybe a new way of thinking. And there's a lot of new ways of thinking that you keep touching on. And at a time when it does seem that many small organizations are being swallowed up by large ones, in that sense, you're also unique. What's allowed you to stand firmly in your smallness with great reach, and how do you feel about these changes in terms of small agencies kind of being eaten up?
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about them. I know sometimes scaling things up, there's more opportunities and benefits the bigger you are. But I've also seen, particularly in the area of adoption and permanency, get kind of minimized and eroded, if you will. And I'm concerned about that. I think with some major changes in our state with the continuum of care reform, that also happened, that we sort of downgraded adoption. And we could see it happening. It was kind of like when your kid's up in the tree and you know the branch is breaking and you can see the kid falling. And we told folks this was going to happen. We could see the writing on the wall. And the powers that be didn't believe us and said, no, we're going to do this universal process. It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And of course, it's not turning out to be that way. And so now we're kind of going back and filling in the holes. Being a small agency has, pros and cons. In some ways, it gives us a lot of flexibility. I can just decide, and that's how the Youth Acceptance Project started, was, okay, we're just going to do this. We're just going to do it. There was a funding opportunity, and we're just going to do it. And we did. And we didn't know what we were doing when we started, but now we do. And so I think that's a real advantage. I think being a small agency, we are able to stay true to our mission and our passion areas. And our board of directors feels very strongly about that if we were subsumed by a larger organization, that some of our programs would go away because the bottom line might not be good enough. And so obviously we all have to worry about bottom line, but there's different ways to do that. And so I'm sad. I'm saddened about it because I think it's diminishing the field. And I think, like when I said earlier, when I started, there was this strong group of powerful directors of adoption agencies, and they're pretty much gone. Most of them have retired or moved on. And what we see now is the people that are supervising adoption programs are mid-level professionals, which are great and they're wonderful. They usually, grew from direct services. They often are there for a short period of time. They're in that position for a few years, and then they move somewhere else or do something differently. And it's a different generation, and folks work differently than we did. And but I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about not having that leadership. We've had a voice at the state level through our statewide association, and we were the kind of small but mighty providers, but we always stood up to make sure that our concerns and the concerns of the children we were serving were heard.
Since you have your fingers in the pot in other places, are you feeling like what you're seeing here in California is replicated in other places? Are they struggling with the same issues?
I think they're different from state to state because the systems are so different. I think there's certainly some commonality. California went through the continuum of care reform where we wanted to get kids out of group homes. And I think we led the way on that nationally. But we've also learned some lessons. We kind of threw the baby out with the bathwater. So we closed all those small mom and pop group homes. We kept the really big ones. And now sometimes there isn't the appropriate place for a young person to be for a short period of time if they can't make it in a family setting. And I think we've lost a part of our field that I'm not sure that we should have. None of us want to see kids growing up in group homes. That's not where kids should grow up. But sometimes on a short-term basis, it's a good landing place.
What do you do to prepare your families and support them after the children are in the home, both pre and post legalization?
Well, we have an extensive training program, pre-service training. It's about 24 hours, and the state requirement, I think, is half that, and we haven't caved. We don't do what the state requirement is. We do what we think we need to do. And we have ongoing training and for families to participate in. There's also in the Bay Area, there's a lot of training in collaborative other organizations in places. So we make sure that families have access to that. And we're there. We're there. One of my social workers has been in our agency for 37 years.
Wow.
And she's there, and her kids she plays have kids of their own now. And we're there. We pick up the phone. Everything doesn't go to voicemail. We're there. We answer the phone. And as you know, sometimes families adopt younger kids and things are going really well for a long time. And then usually adolescence hits and that's the match that lights the fire. And we're there. We're there to support families as best we can, help them get the support and the services that they need. We don't have a mental health program. That's the other thing that sets us apart. I think we're the only people left in the universe that don't have a mental health program. But we work collaboratively with our partners and our colleagues that do, and just really work with every family as best we can to help them get the support and services that they need.
Now, what brought you to all of this? What's your training? What personally brought you to this field? Because you've been committed, as you said, for 26 years, I think. Yeah. So how did you get here?
My entire career has been in nonprofit management and leadership. Done a couple different things, worked in substance abuse for a while and was working in substance abuse when the AIDS epidemic started. And so I worked there in that field for a long time. I have a master's degree in healthcare administration, which is kind of a weird anomaly, but it was a program that was all about community and public health, which prepared me really well for the nonprofit field. And so this nonprofit expertise and experience, and then I'm an adoptive parent, and so then there was the heart piece that goes with that. I'm the mom of 2 daughters by adoption. And when I started at Family Builders, one daughter was with us. It was about 6 at the time, and we were in the process of adopting a second child. And so, near and dear to my heart, I understand the things that our families are going through. And I think being an adoptive parent-led organization has a lot of strengths for our organization.
What do you do to keep yourself stable in the midst of all the chaos that doing the kind of work we do brings into our life?
Well, it's probably not my best wheelhouse there, but staying connected to colleagues and peers is really important, and those relationships are really important. I like to walk. I'm very close to my daughters in our family. It's very important to me. I have a little pup who's my best friend, my little sweetheart, and just simple things. I don't pretty simple life.
Well, sometimes that works really well in working in a very complex field. So that makes perfect sense. Someday you'll retire. I hope not soon. And someday somebody's going to write something about you. It might be your epitaph on your on your tombstone. But how would you like to be remembered? Are there words that you would like to have describe you?
It's a quote that I live by, and it's a quote by Audre Lorde. And the quote is, "If I waited for the right time to say what needed to be said, I'd be speaking from the grave."
Whoa. Whoa, that's powerful. That's not one I've ever heard before.
Sometimes I find myself in meetings with hundreds of colleagues, and I'm looking around the room and wondering, why aren't you speaking up? Why aren't you raising your hand? Why aren't you standing up and shouting from the rafters
Yeah.
about whatever it is? And sometimes I get self-conscious and feel like I'm talking too much. And then I kind of remember that and remember that that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
It's to be a fierce advocate and to speak up and to stand up and shout if I have to. And so that brings me comfort too.
And it's hard. I mean, it's been the story of my professional life as well. And you're not always liked when you do that, but you give permission for other people to show their power as well. So thank you for doing that. I personally want to thank you. We need those voices, and they're very valuable to the field and to the world, I think. And it sets an example to our families and children to be able to speak up on their own behalf as well. I mean, if we don't, they don't, right?
Yep. And
Yeah.
there's no one more fierce than an adoptive parent with a child with challenges.
That's exactly, well, we hope. We hope they will be.
Right, right.
Yeah, that's our hope. For people who are watching this interview next week, next year, 3 years from now,
Mhm.
what do you want them to know about your work, the outcomes of your work, the things that make you really proud of your staff, of your agency? If there are statistics, if there are things that you'd like to share that show why the work that you do has been so impactful, now would be a good time to do it.
It's about believing in families. And one of the guiding principles in the Youth Acceptance Project for us is that families can and do change. So yes, family might have had a really big reaction. When a child comes out, a person comes out in their family, it's pretty much a crisis. That's just automatic. When we come out to our families, it's a crisis. But it doesn't have to stay that way. And with support, with information, with guidance, families can and do change. And we have to remember that. We have to hold that near and dear. I think that the shift right now in the priority of placing children and having children grow up with their families, within their families, we have to look much harder and do much better around keeping children in their family, extended family, and communities, instead of taking them out and putting them in systems. We know they're not doing so well in systems, so we have to change that. And I think just remembering that families can and do change, communities can support their own people, their own folks, and we need to help make that happen. We need to make sure that happens, and we need to put resources into that.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's really wise words for anybody who's watching this. I'm curious to know if there's anything I haven't asked you that you'd really like to share. This is a great opportunity to impact up and coming social workers, other professionals out there. It could be judges, lawyers, psychologists, therapists, or potential families. Any last words you'd like to share with them? Because you got a lot of wisdom under your belt.
I think listening. I think, stepping back and listening to the children, listening to the young people, the youth, making sure that when we're making decisions for children, and in particular for older youth, that we're making developing youth-driven programs, so the youth really do lead the way, so they get to be where they want to be, where they feel they belong. Remember that belonging is such an important element of well-being. And The speaking up piece. When I think about young folks coming into the field, that's the one thing I want them to do. Is I want them to find their voice and to speak up, and to not be afraid to do that.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Those are great words of wisdom, and I appreciate it. I've always had very high respect for you and the work that you've done, and I hope you get to do it for a while more, because we need you. And as you said, our leaders are disappearing. The creative minds, the expansive ideas, the excitement about creating new things seems to be missing. And we need you to lead the next pack of folks into that area, so they can do a better job. So thank you. Thank you for being one of our legacy folks. And thank you for taking the time to do this interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me to. It's wonderful to see you, and I'm honored to be a part of this project. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Graham.
You're welcome.